everybody, welcome to my new channel called AV Escape. Feels so weird to say that because for the last 10 years plus I've been saying The Art of Guitar, which is my main channel. So if you ever want to learn guitar, check that one out. But if you're interested in all things AV related, I'm talking video games, movies, TV shows, even TV commercials, because those can actually suck you in sometimes, you know? But as I'm recording this, it's only 4 days away from Christmas. So I wanted to talk about one of my all-time favorite horror films that's Christmas related called Black Christmas. I'm going to be talking about the 1974 version. I know they've done some remakes of it, one in 2006 from what I know, but this one's going to be the OG, the 74 version.
I think your attitude really sucks.
It's actually a movie I watch all year round and not just during the holidays, so you can't call me a fair weather fan. So let's just get right to it. I want to talk about all the reasons why I love this movie. And by the way, there are going to be spoilers, so hopefully you've seen the movie already. I mean, you've had enough time by now. First off, the plot. I have to say hats off to the writer Roy Moore. I should get that in there for sure. But Black Christmas is considered one of the first slasher films ever made. And I'd say along with being one of the first, it's also one of the best. So it really set a high bar, like right off the bat. And the plot's actually pretty simple, but it sets the stage for terror, drama, suspense, but at the same time you get some humor and you also have this real feeling of warmth. They really captured something with this movie. So some lunatic is making prank phone calls to this sorority house, and just wait till you hear some of the noises this person makes. It's freaking nightmare fuel. And at the same time, one of the girls of the sorority house named Claire goes missing. And another girl, not part of the sorority, is actually found dead, often left in the woods somewhere. A big part of this film hinges on the way that the rest of the cast deal with Claire's disappearance, while also dealing with their own issues and their own demons, if you will. Along with Mrs. Mack, who's the house mother of the sorority, who's usually drinking, by the way, and the police, everyone basically does their part to figure out what's going on and to try to comfort each other, you know, just to be there for each other in this crazy time. Except for maybe a girl named Barb, who's usually pretty buzzed as well. Lots of drinking going on here. So they have to figure out if, number one, the caller and the killer are the same person. Number two, is it somebody they know? And three, if Claire is a victim of this person. And I gotta say that the twist at the very end is one that's left reverberations in the horror world ever since. Now I have to talk about the cast, but I'm really only gonna focus on a few of the actors that really stood out to me when I watched this film. And it's one of those things where it's obvious, you know, Olivia Hussey is the star. Need I say more? She plays a girl named Jess, the main character, and one of several girls living in the most 70s looking sorority houses ever filmed. If you check it out, you're going to notice that there's a lot of dark wood paneling everywhere. You know, back then it just seemed like they used dark wood for everything in homes. So Olivia Hussey as Jess is the timeless beauty, you know, the final girl, and really has a way of making us care about what happens to her. Sometimes I think movies forget about that. Like a lot of modern movies, you know, no offense, I'll watch them and I won't really care about the main character. So, you know, it's one of those things where Olivia Hussey doesn't have to really try that hard. She just is likable in general. Perhaps that's why she'd later go on to play Mary in Jesus of Nazareth, which, by the way, is one of those handful of movies that I saw way too young as a kid. Just that crucifixion scene really stuck with me and messed me up for many years. And yes, I plan to make a video about those movies that messed me up as a kid very soon. I think that's going to be very cathartic. We also have Miss Margot Kidder, who after this movie is soon to star in movies like Amityville and Superman. Now, in this movie, she plays Barb, the sorority sister with a propensity for drinking a little too much. Seems to have mommy issues, probably daddy issues as well, but at the same time has this fun, twisted, kind of perverted sense of humor.
No, really, they did 3 days, 24 hours a day.
Which makes us still root for her despite all of her sharp edges. Let's just say that the girls have to walk on eggshells around Barb. She's one of those people that could just kind of go off at any second.
And you leave me alone, you're drunk. Go to bed.
I think we all know a couple people like that in our lives, so we kind of relate to that. I believe I saw an interview one time where Margot was talking about how everybody treated Olivia Hussey like acting royalty. And I mean, it's 1974 and Olivia Hussey had already done Romeo and Juliet, so she was kind of elevated as far as, the younger actors were concerned in this film. Of course, Margot would eventually get her flowers, as we all know, in movies like I just mentioned, Superman and Amityville. Amityville's another one of those early movies in my life. That pig in the window with the red eyes, that screwed me up bad. I have to mention the guy who played Chris, who was Claire's boyfriend. Claire was the first girl to get offed in the movie, spoiler. But his name's Art Hindle. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm really bad with pronunciations. But he was just real solid in his role. He was really convincing, playing a boyfriend who put his whole life on hold to try to find his missing girlfriend. Now, this might be a bit scandalous, but as I was watching the movie, I wonder if you would agree, every time there was a scene with Chris and Jess together, I felt like they had really great chemistry. I just kept thinking, man, they would make a great couple. And then I thought, I shouldn't be thinking this stuff. They're both looking for a missing friend. And of course, I gotta mention John Saxon. He was the dude who I first saw in Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. Badass movie, by the way. And he just has a way with his presence to elevate a movie. He's got also that kind of vibe where he plays a really great lieutenant. He's got the voice, he's got the presence, like I said, that would make any bad guy confess. I think he would even make an innocent man confess. Now let's talk about the horror aspect of this horror film, obviously. So one of the other traumatizing films in my life, same with a lot of people, is The Exorcist. I saw it when I was 7 years old. So I was no novice to terror before seeing Black Christmas for the first time, but I was still freaked out by those voices like I mentioned on the phone. They just knew how to capture crazy sounds back then. Everything's so analog and there's a bit of distortion when things get really loud. Just like in The Exorcist. So whoever was responsible for sound design in this film did a great job. The sounds hit you and send shivers through your whole body sometimes. Speaking of terror, there's a scene where Olivia Hussey, I'll just call her Jess, answers the phone and it's that crazy person and she holds it up and all the girls from the sorority all gather around to listen. And the camera pans to each one of their faces really close up so you can see their eyes. And you could just feel the terror. You could just feel like the horror that they're experiencing as they're listening to this crazy guy on the phone. I should mention the director here named Bob Clark, who eventually went on to direct movies like A Christmas Story, I'm sure you've heard of that, and Porky's. So he went on to bigger and better things. I shouldn't say better because I love Black Christmas, but I thought that was great to see so many people go from Black Christmas onto bigger things afterwards. It's always a good sign that, you found this hidden gem when a movie from 1974 can kind of spawn so many great talents afterwards. Hands down, though, Olivia Hussey's reactions are top shelf, I would say. Just look at these iconic shots. And by the way, she has one of the greatest all-time screams in a horror movie of all time. It's towards the end, once again, spoiler, when the killer grabs her hair. And I actually jumped the first time I saw this scene. And I'm not a jumper when it comes to horror movies, typically. Speaking of her hair, I mean, look at it. Isn't it perfect? Sorry, I'm fanboying over here, but I notice that every time I watch it. I feel like I'm watching a hair product commercial whenever I see hers. I got to talk a little bit more about the sounds in the film. They're so perfectly laid in there. Sometimes it's very subtle. It could just be this constant sound. And then when it disappears, there's a silence that, you go, oh, I guess there was a crazy sound going on the whole time. I didn't even realize it.
Who is it?
It's like when your refrigerator shuts off for a second, you're like, oh, it was buzzing the whole time. I didn't even notice it. And that leaves enough space for something really scary to happen. It's the classic jump scare trick, but this is 74, so this is the OG. Besides Psycho and stuff, I know, but it's one of the early OGs. They did a brilliant job hiding the killer's appearance and only letting us see bits and pieces. There's a scene where you can see his big eyeball sticking through the doorway. And then another spoiler here, when one of the sorority girls is getting offed, you could kind of see his silhouette, and then you see his face a little bit. And I kept thinking, is that Bon Scott? Mostly, though, we just see a first-person point of view through the killer's eyes, and I bet they had to innovate some camera mounts or something to get these shots. I mean, I would love to know how they pulled this off, because back then they had those gigantic cameras, the film cameras, and they had to mount it somehow. So as the guy's climbing the terrace outside, the side of the building, when he's inside going up in the attic, that must have been pretty tricky. And they may talk about it in some bonus features somewhere. I gotta look for that. By the way, I have the VHS. I don't have the DVD, so I'm gonna have to order that for the bonus features, but let me grab the VHS because it's pretty sweet. All right, check that out. It's still in like the cellophane wrapping. And the bottom, though, is open. So it's almost like whoever bought this first wanted to protect the actual case of it. So isn't that cool? Very old school. I'm very proud of this. It's one of my favorite things that I own. It says, if this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight. That's pretty classic. A terrifying thing to me personally, being a musician, is when Jess's goofy boyfriend, it's a guy I can't stand in this movie. I think we're supposed to hate him, but he is doing some sort of piano recital thing and he totally botches it. And at the end, he's so mad at himself that he destroys the Steinway piano with a microphone stand. And I thought, that's so crazy to do that to a Steinway piano. I wonder how much that took up the budget. Now, to me, one of the marks of a great horror film is when the visuals stick with you long after you're done watching it. Obviously, The Exorcist is known for that. Just the sight alone of Claire sitting on that rocking chair, rocking back and forth with that bag over her head, and you could see from the way it's sucked in where her mouth is that she was trying desperately to breathe through it. Man, that just made me wonder, if that ever happened to me, I wonder if I could bite the bag. If that would make a hole big enough to let me survive. I don't know. I don't want to even try it to find out. And I recommend you do not try it either. But that's an iconic shot. I mean, that's on the cover of the VHS that I have right here. Another thing that stuck with me is the hook on the rope in the attic scene, which involves the house mother. That's very brutal to watch. By the way, I should mention here that in both cases, when the girls met their fate, it was shortly after thinking that they heard the cat named Claude somewhere in the distance and they went off to investigate. This movie has a way of playing tug of war with your emotions. For example, there's a scene where a bunch of caroler kids come around and Jess opens the door and they're singing Christmas carols to her, which I always found kind of awkward. I mean, do you just stand there and smile at them? I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do. But at the same time that's happening, somebody in the house is getting offed. And not in a very pleasant way either. But I have to say, these kids that are singing carols are kind of creepy. They have no joy in their faces. They all look kind of dead inside, And I thought, man, somebody crack a smile here. You're singing Christmas songs. I have to talk about the humor in this movie. Like I said, there's a lot of tug of war going on with your emotions. And so the comic relief moments are mostly from the house mother, Mrs. Mack. I mentioned that she's a little bit heavy into the drinking. So yeah, between Mrs. Mack and Barb, there's a lot of booze flowing in that sorority house. And you'd expect it from college girls, but from the house mother, not so much. I mean, she was hilarious though. She would hide bottles all around. So one time she took out this encyclopedia, opened it. It had been hollowed out with a bottle of sherry stuck inside. And another time she went in the bathroom and took the top off the back of the toilet and pulled out another bottle there. So classic alcoholic, just hide bottles all around the house. One thing I really loved about preparing for this video is that I really watched the movie with crazy detail. I turned on the subtitles and I really listened. I had no distractions going on and actually heard a couple lines that I didn't even know existed in the movie. One of the best ones is when the house mother was talking to herself basically under her breath, and she said, "Those girls would hump the Leaning Tower of Pisa if they could get up there."
The Leaning Tower of Pisa if they could get up there.
And I kept thinking, man, how did I miss that? That's such a classic line. It's one of my favorite lines now in the whole movie. There's also this scene where Barb is at this Christmas gathering with kids, and there's a Santa Claus, and he's all grumpy, and he's swearing and everything.
Ho, 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 shit.
And then you look over, and Barb is giving one of the kids a glass of champagne, I believe. And she's like, "Oh, look at the kid, he's all schnockered up." And I thought, man, the 70s were wild. There's also a sergeant named Nash who plays kind of a Gomer Pyle type of character, and he's like the butt of all the jokes at the precinct, basically. He's also a bit naive, so when Barb was there and she was telling them their phone number so that the cops could get a hold of the sorority house, she used the exchange fellatio.
Fellatio. It's a new exchange. F-E.
And Nash had no idea what that even meant. And the rest of the guys were laughing at him, and he was just like, "What? Oh, is it something dirty or something?" So he's one of those naive type, even though he's an older guy. By the way, back in the old days, they used exchanges for phone numbers. So fellatio would be like 2 letters, FE and then a number. That's just some old-fashioned thing my dad told me about. By the way, when I was a kid, we had all numbers. We really didn't have area codes though like we do now, so that kind of tells you my era. I'm a huge fan of campy horror movies, and there were a few campy moments in this one as well. One of them is another thing that kind of tugged at your emotions. There was a death reveal where they showed two of the sisters that had been offed. I have to use the word offed for YouTube, sorry. And at first you're shocked. But then if you look, one of the sorority girls' eyes are crossed and she's just like frozen. And it kind of makes you laugh at the same time you're freaking out. So there you go again, messing with your freaking emotions all the time in this movie. Another campy moment is when Claire is in her bedroom. This is before all the stuff started going down. And if you look at her wall, it looks like she drew a picture of a flower. But in the middle of the flower, it looks like an anus to me. I asked my friend and she was like, yeah, it definitely looks like that to me too. So I like to call that the butt flower picture. And then on the other side of her bedroom, she has a poster on her wall of her boyfriend. They didn't have smartphones, so I guess if you wanted to always look at pictures of your boyfriend, just put up a poster back then. I'm a huge sucker for aesthetics in movies. I love how movies make you feel if they take you to a certain time period, and this one right from the jump does that. I read that it was filmed on good old 35mm, and it just looks and feels like it was. And even though this movie was filmed in Toronto during the winter time, there's a certain warmth to it. And I think the film, the 35mm film, adds to that. But, you know, like I talked about earlier, all the wood in the house is very dark looking. It's got that 70s thing. But everything that's bright in the movie really pops out, really stands out on top of all the dark background. Especially the Christmas lights. There's just a real saturation to them that I love. And then these crazy curtains that are red and black, they really stand out as well. Back then, that was a popular thing if I remember right. Kind of like post-60s, maybe you'll call it 70s psychedelic. Much like the crackle you get from playing an actual record, like a vinyl record, I love movies that are filmed on film because you get that graininess to it. And if you watch this, it's got so much grain happening in the picture that it just almost looks like it's vibrating, like there's static going on in some parts. You get a feel for the Toronto charm when it comes to buildings, when they go outside during the day, and it actually kind of has like a European feel. Real classy and stoic. If a building can be stoic, I guess that's what I would call it. Adding to the realism of this movie is the Canadian cold, like I already mentioned. And being from Minnesota, I know when something looks authentic when it comes to cold. So they go outside, they have the breath condensation, you know, the whiteness of their skin. And it really makes you cozy though when they're all huddled around this barrel that's on fire. It just all felt so authentic. You know, I've been there before during the wintertime in front of a fire trying to stay warm. The only thing that made me nervous though was Jess was wearing this long scarf. So when she came up to the flames, I got a little bit nervous there. A lot like Dead Poets Society, this movie gives you that part of the club kind of vibe, especially at the beginning of the film when all the girls are still there before they all run off and do their things for the holidays or whatever. You just get this feeling like you belong to their club. And it is a good feeling when you can feel that camaraderie through a movie. I felt it in my life through, you know, sports, when I did baseball, when I did martial arts for a long time. And you miss that as you get older sometimes. So when you watch movies like Dead Poets Society, you feel like you're part of the boys club, you know. In this one, you're part of the girls club, but, you know, either way, it's a good feeling. The Goonies was good for that as well. You felt like you were part of their little group too. So if it's a movie about sorority girls, you would think there'd be romance in it, right? But actually, I found it refreshing that there was basically no romance in this movie. I think the only part that has anything romantic would be the kiss between Chris and Claire, like right off the bat. So not to be a buzzkill, but unlike a lot of 80s horror movies, there's not going to be nudity, there's not going to be crazy scenes where two kids run off to go be crazy in another room and then the killer shows up. None of that in this movie. I love noticing errors in movies, you know. Sometimes it's a continuity error, you know. Sometimes it's just something maybe they didn't think of, like a plot hole or something. The first one is Barb is holding a glass in the beginning and her fingernail polish is gone on her index finger, and then it comes back later. There's another scene where Peter, the guy that I totally hate, by the way, you're supposed to hate him, and so he did a great job acting that part, but he's got some like fuzz on his shoulder. I think it was from the tinsel on the tree, which is weird because I think they just took cotton strands and threw them on a tree. And that's probably not safe because back then they did not have LED lights. So fire hazard. But he's got a huge chunk of that on his shoulder, then he turns around and it's gone. One of the funniest things though is when Barb is having some sort of asthma attack and she reaches for her inhaler, which by the way, I've been using an inhaler since I was 12. And she went to use it, and instead of actually just doing a puff like you would normally, she holds it upside down and then kind of sucks on it like it's some sort of nebulizer. Now, I might be overlooking something, but something that I thought was really obvious once the big reveal happens at the end, so spoiler, is when Jess is on the phone and she hears the creepy guy screaming at her. Since the calls were coming from inside the house, that's the big reveal at the end, you would think she would also hear it like in the distance in the house. You would think you would hear it in stereo and kind of put two and two together. And then I love the epic way they ended the movie, because it didn't go out with some huge bang, but it went out with like a whimper. And it leaves space for you just to kind of think about what just happened. All the scary visuals, you know, the shadowy figures in the background that you start to put together. Oh, that was the killer. He was actually in the picture. He was in the background that whole time. The way the camera pans around the house and shows that the killer is still alive and he's still in the house while Jess is laying in the bed, trying to recover from what just went down, which you'll have to watch to see what happens. And then they pan back from Claire still sitting on that damn rocking chair with a bag over her head. And it goes all the way back and there's silence, except for a phone ringing in the distance. I thought that was a really clever way to end this movie. You know, they could have gone several different directions, but instead they just let you sit in it. They just let you sit there and listen to that phone while thinking of all the things that just happened. So that's why Black Christmas is one of my top favorite horror movies of all time, let alone, you know, a holiday horror movie. So let me know if you agree or disagree with my takes. And also let me know what your top 5 horror movies would be for the holidays. I'd be really excited to see what those are. So thank you everyone for watching my first video on this new channel. Obviously, you know, I have to ask you to like and subscribe if possible. It'd be fun to grow this thing. And I want to keep going. I got a lot of ideas for videos coming up, and I'm going to be very busy. And if you haven't seen Black Christmas, the original one, I urge you to check it out. I think it's going to become one of your favorites as well. Okay, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.